I am the storyteller. Tonight I'll tell you a story laced with dread silence and something far older than fear. An experience Elias Thorne could never explain, let alone forget, after accepting one final assignment in a place long erased from maps. Sit back, listen to the wind shifting across a dead landscape, and discover what happened when Deadwater remembered him. It was the fourth day when the sand came in sideways, razored gusts carving my rental truck into something archaeological. The horizon was a blister, pulsing with heat, but beyond it lay Deadwater, or what was left of it. They'd hired me to map the bones of the old mining town, use LiDAR retro map, the strata pull coordinates from the sand-like teeth. I'd done it before, for sinkholes and war zones. But here the terrain wouldn't hold still. The air shimmered. My instruments blinked wrong. The GPS pointed south, then spun. When I pulled over to recalibrate, the truck died like it had drowned. No signal, no echo, no God. When I stepped out, I saw her. Standing by the old mile marker, half buried, carved with petroglyphs I don't remember learning. Her hair caught the wind like it remembered water. Same jawline, same eyes. My sister 20 years gone. I called her name. She didn't move. She just watched. Then the sand covered her, and she was gone. And that was the last moment I trusted my eyes. I arrived in Deadwater at twilight, if it could still be called that. The town wasn't on most maps anymore, not the current ones. You had to dig back to the 1930s topographical archives, maybe older, before the dust buried it like a bad rumor. The government sent me, with an open brief, reconstruct structural footprint. Document anomalous geological activity. Do not engage with locals. They paid in advance. I took the job. From the ridge, Deadwater looked like a half-sunk fossil. A church bell tower, like a snapped tooth. The skeletons of buildings slumped under dunes windows, coughing sand. One gas station, one store, a chapel with no cross. Everything else gone to bone and rust. I parked on the edge of the remains, an old dirt road leading to what was once Main Street. Drones couldn't fly here. Satellites lost resolution. The last tech they tried lost in static and scrambled coordinates. The compass I brought wasn't digital. Family heirloom, my father's. The needle spun slowly like it was stirring something thick. Not magnetic interference. Not solar flare. Something else. The first person I met wasn't a person, not yet. She was a silhouette in the dust, leaning against the chapel's warped doorframe, long skirt boots, and a face that didn't belong in this century. She smiled before I spoke. "Dr. Thorne," she said. "I didn't give you my name." She cocked her head. "Of course you did. Before." Her voice was calm, desert flat. No accent I could place. "You work here?" I asked, stepping closer. The ground was soft, but not with sand. It felt hollow, like walking on breath. "I keep the record," she said. "Names, burials, what goes under, the chapels still in use." Her eyes narrowed. "You think death stops needing a door just 'cause folks forget the hinges?" She turned and disappeared into the dark. I didn't follow. Night fell fast. I set up camp in the skeleton of an old store, a roofless husk with shelves eaten by termites and time. I kept the truck close, sensors hooked up, batteries topped. Still no signal, no sound. At 2:13 a.m. I woke to a bell. Not ringing, swinging, back and forth, steady, no wind. I grabbed my light, stepped out, followed the sound. Dust, peeled off the chapel like breath in reverse. The bell swung with precision. Mechanical. Intentional. No rope. No ladder. I circled the chapel. Found footprints, not mine, not hers. Barefoot. Child-sized. Leading into the foundation where the boards had splintered open. That's when I smelled it. Not dust. Not age. Coal oil. Leather. Wet stone. The smell my sister left behind when she vanished. I turned back. Tripped. There, lying in the sand beside my boot, was the compass. I hadn't dropped it. It was zipped in my jacket. Still was. This was another one, identical, but older, and the needle didn't spin, it pointed straight down. I didn't sleep after that. I recorded everything, logged it, labeled it, tried to rationalize. But something was wrong with the air. It tasted warm, and the map I drew of Deadwater by morning, it didn't match the town at all. I used to think the worst thing was being lost. I was wrong. The worst thing is realizing you've always been lost, and someone else has the map. Morning came like a lie, too quiet, too clean. The sky above Deadwater was bone-white, bleached flat by heat that hadn't yet arrived. No birds, no insects. Just stillness, and the weight of being watched by something you couldn't see but couldn't stop feeling. I went back to my gear. The terrain scans were garbage. My LiDAR rig returned incoherent topography depth readings that implied vertical structures beneath the surface like towers or vaults. That wasn't possible. This was supposed to be sandstone and shale, nothing deep enough to hide that. Then I opened the physical map I'd drawn last night, the one I double-checked before falling asleep. It was wrong. Completely wrong. Buildings had moved. Alleys were where roads had been. The chapel had shifted south by 20 meters. My GPS confirmed my location same as before, but the landmarks didn't align. I checked my notes again. And then I found something that stopped me cold. A symbol drawn in the margins. A small, jagged spiral etched with shaking hands. I didn't remember drawing it, but I recognized it. I'd seen it carved into the rocks when I was a child the last time I was in a place like this. The week before, my sister disappeared. I hiked to the edge of the settlement just after noon. The heat came in pulses like breath, and the dunes shimmered as if something beneath them was moving just beneath the surface tension. I found the graveyard. 23 headstones, only 6 with names, the rest marked with iron rods unnumbered, as if someone had run out of time or stopped caring. Most were half-buried, lichenless, too clean for stones this old. As I walked between them, the compass grew heavy in my pocket. Not metaphorically, literally heavier, as if drawn downward. My teeth itched. My vision bent at the edges as though the corners of reality had started to curl. That's when I saw him. Old Silas Carr. He was sitting on a broken bench under a dead mesquite, chewing tobacco and mumbling to himself. Filthy overalls, wide brim hat full of holes. His face was sun-leathered, but his eyes were too sharp, too wet, like they didn't belong to the rest of him. "You'll want to keep north of the old scene," he said, without looking up. "I don't know what that means," I replied. He tapped the side of his head. "It's not for knowing. It's for feeling. Trouble is, most folks don't listen to the itch behind their eyes until it's too damn late." I stepped closer. "You live here?" "Nope." "I remember here. Big difference." He looked at me, then really looked. Eyes like mirrors catching fire. "You're the one with the needle." I froze. The compass. He smiled, a few teeth missing, the others dark as soot. Don't matter what you call it, long as you don't follow it. He leaned forward, serious now. Deadwater ain't a place you map, son. It's a place that maps you back. I left him there, though I'm not sure he ever really arrived. The chapel stood silent again, its bell still swaying softly, though the air was still. Inside, I took photos. The walls were scored with fine scratches, markings too shallow to see unless the light hit just right. They weren't words. They were contours, elevation lines, like a topographic map burned into the wood. I traced one with my finger. The moment I did, I heard a sound, not in the room but in my head, a deep, distant thrum, like wind through a hollow bone. Then something moved behind the altar. I drew my light. Nothing. But there was a door I hadn't noticed before, small, low, half covered in sand behind where the altar had once stood. The latch was old iron. When I touched it, the thrum stopped. The heat lifted. And for a moment I thought I smelled her again. Lilac and coal oil. I left. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I marked it on the new map. It wasn't there the next morning. That night, the first real dream came. Not fragments, not images. A full, immersive memory I'd never had before. I was underground in a circular chamber lit with gas lamps. The walls breathed. My sister stood opposite me, her face blurred like a poorly developed photo. She held something in her hands, a strip of skin. Mine, marked, with spirals. She whispered, "You gave them the shape, now they only need the sound." Then she turned, and the sound came. Not a scream, not music, a map being unfolded from inside a living thing. I woke up with sand in my mouth, the compass beside me. Its needle was buried in the center of my chest, and it was still pointing down. There are rips in the earth where memory seeps, not wounds, mouths. The third morning in Deadwater brought cloud cover, though no one saw it come. One moment the sun hammered the dirt like a curse. The next the sky was slate-colored and close, too close, like the clouds had settled just above the rooftops and hung there, waiting. I catalogued the events from the night before. The dream, the compass, the mouthful of sand. I wrote it all down, time-stamped and coded like I was still in control. But I wasn't. I knew that now. Deadwater had started remembering me. He arrived around noon, Kip Donnelly, graduate student from some northeastern university, tall, tan, and unprepared. I heard his Jeep long before I saw it. A screaming roar in a place where sound doesn't travel right. When he stepped out, he grinned and waved like he was entering a tourist exhibit. Dr. Elias Thorne, I presume? He said it like a joke. I didn't laugh. He held out his hand. Kip, Cultural Anthropology. I'm your assistant. No, I said. You're not. He shrugged. Funny, because the Bureau said otherwise. The Bureau. I hadn't told him who contracted me. I hadn't told anyone. How long were you driving before you found the town I asked? Too long. GPS kept rerouting. Nearly turned back, but then this weird mist rolled in. And there it was, just like that. He snapped his fingers. That's not how mist works, I said. He didn't answer, just looked around. What a shithole, he added, smiling like it was charming. I didn't want him there. Not because of who he was, but because of what he represented, a second set of eyes. Another mind to challenge mine, to contradict my memories, to say, "No, Elias, that wasn't there yesterday, you're just tired." Still, the Bureau had clearly sent him for a reason. So I took him to the chapel. The interior looked different now. The wooden boards were warping, pulling upward, as though reaching for something above. The faint carvings had deepened, as if time worked faster here. Kip ran his fingers over the altar. "Someone cleaned this," he said. "They didn't." He looked at me. "You sure?" I nodded, but I wasn't. I showed him the door behind the altar, the one that wasn't on any blueprint map or floor plan. He squatted beside it, whistled low. "Looks old. It wasn't there yesterday." "You sure?" again, that question. I knelt beside him, placed my palm on the latch. Cold, wetter than it should have been, like touching the inside of a mouth. Kip stood back. "Should we open it?" "Nah." But I did anyway. The smell hit first. Mildew, mold, blood, and something else. Fermented silence. The kind of quiet that ripens in sealed places. The passage led downward, rough-hewn and narrow. The air was colder by degrees. 10 feet in the beam of my flashlight began to stutter. Kip's camera flickered static. We reached a landing. That's when we saw the wall. It wasn't stone, it was leather. Stretched skin taut across a wooden frame. Symbols carved into it, not drawn, not etched, but pressed inward from the opposite side. Kip raised his hand to touch it. "Don't," I said. Too late. The wall inhaled, only for a second, but we both felt it, and something moved on the other side. Something big but slow. We backed away. Didn't speak until we were outside. Back in the sunlight, Kip looked sick. "What was that part of the town?" I said. "You think they did rituals down there, old cult stuff. Or maybe it was a basement." He laughed nervously. "You really think that?" "No," I admitted. "I just wanted to hear someone say it out loud." Later that evening, we reviewed the drone footage. Kip had taken a new scan of the town with a modified quadcopter. Frame by frame, buildings rearranged. A door vanished. A windmill moved 30 yards north. One frame showed 3 people walking in the distance, but we were alone. I zoomed in. The resolution degraded, but not from motion blur. The distortion was organic, like the camera lens was warping in fear. One of the figures wore a long dress, and she was holding my sister's hand. I took the compass out again. This time it didn't spin. It rattled. A soft, steady tremor, like something deep below was pacing. I dropped it. It landed point down in the sand, perfectly still. That night, the second dream came. I stood at the edge of a canyon, black and bottomless. Across from me, a town rose in the dark. Not dead water, something older, slick stone, no windows. Each building pulsed like a heartbeat. In the canyon below, a voice spoke, but not with words. It showed me a string pulled from the spine, a face carved from salt, a house that walked. Then it showed me the seam. It opened and something crawled through a shadow, stitched in reverse. It wore my face, but the mouth was all wrong. The last thing it said before I woke was, "You left her in the wrong place, Elias. She's not in the earth. She's in the shape beneath it." I woke to Kip screaming. He was outside the chapel, covered in scratches, arms bleeding, eyes wild. "They came out of the ground, man. They fucking spoke to me." I dragged him inside, got him water. He passed out. When I returned to the door behind the altar, it was gone. Again. The mind accepts certain lies to keep from shattering. But the land,
The land remembers everything. Kip wouldn't wake. His breathing was steady, eyes twitching beneath the lids like he was trapped in REM. I bandaged the worst of the cuts, thin, sharp, precise. Not animal, not human, not random. Before he passed out, he said something that kept looping in my mind. They came out of the ground. They spoke to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the chapel had let something out. And now that something was walking in Deadwater with us. With Kip unconscious, I spent the morning in the only building that still had a roof and 4 walls, the old post office. Its doors were rusted shut, but the hinges gave under a crowbar. Inside, time had collapsed. Dust an inch thick. Floorboards soft with rot. Cabinets sealed tight. I pried one open and found what I didn't expect: records. Yellowed files.
Faded carbon paper. Old forms stamped Geological Survey Division from the 1970s. But these weren't mining logs. They were psych profiles, dozens of them, each one tied to a name I recognized from the graveyard, cross-referenced with topographic coordinates, and in the margin of each sheet a small black spiral. Same symbol from my dream. Same one I don't remember drawing on my map. I read the first file. Subject: 019. Marlene W. Observed consistent spatial dissonance during wake cycles. Reported dreams of subterranean rooms filled with her own voice. Topographic overlay shows geographic resonance anomaly near Site C. Subject: sedated indefinitely. Sedated, buried, labeled. And at the bottom, memory does not degrade in structured topography. Proceed with depth phase integration. They weren't surveying the land. They were using people to map it. I took a photo of the document. My phone died immediately. Screen full of static. Battery melted warm in my palm. When I powered it back on, the file was gone. Kip was still unconscious when I returned, but the scratches on his arms had shifted. They'd moved. Same cuts, same length, but now forming patterns. Not random, cartographic. A radial symmetry forming around his left shoulder like the start of a compass rose. I checked the compass, still pointed down, still trembling. Then I looked outside, and my stomach dropped. The town had changed again. Where there had been one road out there were now 3 curved like crescent moons. The gas station had collapsed. The graveyard was gone, not buried, not hidden. Gone. In its place was a cracked basin filled with sand that writhed gently as if breathing. I left Kip inside and walked toward it. Against my better judgment. Against instinct. But I had to know. At the edge of the basin, I saw a hand reaching from the sand. Pale. Motionless. Not dead. Not alive. Just waiting. I touched it. Instantly, my ears filled with static. Not sound. Not pressure. Signal. And in that signal, a voice. She is beneath the scene. Beneath you. Beneath everything you think you know. I stumbled back. The hand sank without a ripple. By nightfall, Kip finally woke up. His voice was hoarse. He didn't remember screaming, didn't remember the attack. But he kept whispering one word over and over again, cartouche. It wasn't a word he should have known. It's not on the survey forms, not in local legend. But it's what we used to call the ancient boundary markers, glyphs that held the names of gods, kings, and cities. Sealed shapes that kept things in or out. He said it in his sleep, too. Over and over, like a name, like a prayer, like a warning. Later that night, I made the mistake of opening the drone footage again. The one Kip took yesterday. This time, I let it run longer. Past the distortion, past the figures. Frame 763, the chapel turns inside out. Walls breathe inward. Frame 764. A fourth figure appears, closer now, wearing a miner's mask from the 1880s, holding a lantern made of bone. Frame 765, no more town, just the sand. And something beneath it rising slowly, as if it were always meant to be remembered again. That night I had the third dream. I stood in a mirrored room with no ceiling. My reflection walked differently than me. Moved first. Around me were doors, 22 of them, each one marked with a place from my memory. The hallway, where I last saw my sister. The university library. The inside of my father's study, and one final door that was not a memory at all. Just a wound in the wall. I opened it. On the other side, I was on my knees, watching myself dig something from the earth. A spine. Not human. Twisted like the spiral. Still alive. The version of me doing the digging looked up and said, "This is where you split. This is where the map bled out." I woke, gasping. The compass was gone. And carved into the floor of the chapel beneath my bedroll was the same spiral. But now it was moving, turning slowly, inward, always inward. What's buried doesn't stay still, and not everything waiting underground is dead. The chapel walls sweated that morning, not metaphorically, actual beads of moisture along the planks. A sour, briny stink like seawater left too long in metal. It didn't make sense. The humidity was impossible. The barometer read dry. But I knew better now. Dead water had rules that bent for memory, and something had started remembering me back. I found the recorder just after sunrise, wedged beneath the floorboard where the spiral had appeared, covered in dust rust along the casing. The screen was cracked, but intact. Not mine. Kip's. Maybe I turned it over and nearly dropped it. Property of Dr. Adrian Locke. The name hit like a rifle shot to the ribs. My mentor, my field lead on the Hollow Earth Topology Project, pronounced dead in a lab fire 6 years ago. But I never believed that story, because Adrian had secrets. Secrets I helped her bury. The recorder still worked. 3 files. I pressed play. Elias, if you're hearing this, you already ignored the signs. Good. You were always better at stubbornness than obedience. Her voice, dry tight, spoken low to avoid detection. Deadwater isn't a ghost town. It's a containment structure, a cartographic lock built with ritual and design. The topography doesn't shift. By chance, it folds in on thought, our thoughts, especially yours. They called it the seam. Back in the 30s, during the dust relocations. The depression wasn't economic here, Elias. It was geographic collapse. This isn't land anymore. It's thought-given form. The deeper they dug, the more it started thinking back. And if you're still using that compass, destroy it. It was never meant to point. It was meant to wake her. The file ended in static. I stood in the center of the chapel, holding the recorder like a detonator. Outside, the wind had picked up dry again, sharp with glassy sand. I opened the second file. I stayed behind. After the bureau pulled out. After the last scan returned a false void. It wasn't a void, it was a pressure chamber. And she speaks in negative space. I can't leave. I'm fragmented. Thought-bound. If you reach the core, you'll understand. You'll remember everything you tried to forget, including her, who I whispered. but the file gave no answer. Just a faint sound behind her words, a rhythmic thud, slow, wet, like something breathing through stone. Kip was gone. I'd left him sleeping wounds bandaged. When I checked the pew where he'd been, all that remained was the compass, not mine, not his. Just another one placed carefully where his head had rested. Its needle spun slowly, then stopped, pointing not down, but west, toward the edge of the town, toward something I hadn't seen before. A gash in the hillside, partially covered by rusted tin and broken timber. A mine entrance, one I would have sworn hadn't existed. I didn't pack. I didn't prepare. I followed the compass. And as I stepped toward the mouth of the shaft, something strange happened. The air reversed, not the wind. The pressure, like the entire atmosphere pulled in just once, inhaling me through the opening. Inside the mine wasn't abandoned. Someone recently had laid cable. Solar lamps every 50 feet. Metal track, though it ended in collapsed gravel not far from the entrance. I moved slowly. Each step carried the weight of a dream remembered at the wrong time. The walls of the shaft were wrong. Too smooth in some places, melted like wax. In others, rough with scratched glyphs, not English, not any alphabet I recognized, but they pulsed, slightly, breathing in shadow. I heard something, not footsteps, paper, pages turning. I followed the sound to a split in the shaft. Left fork collapsed. Right fork sloped down more gradual. There, wedged in a cleft of stone, was a notebook. Red leather, unlabeled. I opened it. Adrian is handwriting. Notes in fragmented sentences, math, geologic terms, but some pages were drawings. A man-shaped hole with no bottom. A chapel floating upside down above a spiral of eyes. A series of interlocking symbols, one of which matched the scratches that had moved across Kip's skin. On the back cover, one sentence scrawled large, "The cartographer is the map." Then I heard her voice, not in the recorder, behind me. "Don't move, Elias." I turned too fast. No one was there, just dust hanging in the light, shaped almost like a face. Almost. And then from deeper in the shaft, down where the path turned black, a sound. Low. Human adjacent, like someone trying to remember how to scream but getting the shape wrong. I stepped back. The dust began to rise, to form. A shape pulling itself from the shaft like a shadow clotting into flesh. And in the dim glow, I saw its face. Mine. I ran. The shape didn't chase me. It just stood, watching, holding the same compass in one hand. As I climbed back toward the entrance, I heard Adrian's voice again. Just one word this time. Split. I stumbled into the daylight. The town was different again. The chapel was gone. In its place, an empty circle burned into the sand 10 meters wide. In the center, a new marker. Not a gravestone, not a monument. Just a slab of rock freshly etched with coordinates. Mine. I used to believe memory was a function of the brain, that it lived in synapses, electrochemical whispers, biological clay. But in Deadwater, I've learned otherwise. Here, memory lives in the soil. I didn't sleep, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to know what I'd dream. The mind had changed me. I felt it in my blood, thick now, almost magnetic. Every time I moved my arm, the compass in my pocket twitched, as if the needle wasn't pointing but responding. By morning, the landscape had warped again.
The sun rose from the north, the roads corkscrewed, and Deadwater's buildings, those still standing, had slid subtly inward like they were being drawn to a single center. I walked to the old store, the one where I'd first camped. Its roof was gone now, but inside the shelves were full, not with goods, with documents. Hundreds of them. Bureau letterhead, soil surveys, declassified memos. At the center of the pile, a binder labeled Phase, iMemory Seeding, 1934. Excerpt page 1. Project Directive utilized frontier trauma and Dust Bowl mass relocations to test viability of geographic memory tethering.
Target zone: Deadwater anomaly, Nevada-Utah border region. Objective: determine if collective memory under stress and ritual conditioning can produce localized temporal deformation. Initial results promising. Excerpt page 6. Incident: Zero Tour. Subject Car S-Child reports. Persistent sightings of mirror folk emerging from dead trees. Cartographic overlay of these experiences reveals a recurring topological fold. Personnel advised not to anchor long-term equipment near the seam.
Excerpt page 12. By July 1935, 39 settlers relocated to Deadwater as part of relief efforts. Of these, 12 later returned. All reported identical dreams. All were sterile upon return. 2 committed suicide after etching identical spirals into their homes. In the margins of these pages, handwritten notes, possibly Adriana's. Elias was right. Topological density affects thought. Kip is exhibiting early-stage cartographosis. The town is remembering us in sequence. I read that last line twice. Sequence. It wasn't remembering what we were. It was remembering us in the order we arrived, which meant it knew Kip first. I ran. Not to the chapel, it was still gone, but to the basin where the graveyard used to be, where I'd seen the hand, where I'd touched memory. It was now a shallow crater. At the center, a body, face down, arms spread, one boot missing. I stepped into the pit heart, hammering, turned the body over. Kip, or what was left of him. Skin faded like an old photograph, eyes wide open dry, lips parted in shock, and on his chest carved deep and deliberate the spiral, but not the one I'd seen before. This one was incomplete, broken at the outer edge, a message, something unfinished, something interrupted. I dropped to my knees. That's when I noticed the ground beneath Kip wasn't soil. It was canvas, old thick painted tan to blend with sand. I cleared it frantic, heart racing. What I uncovered froze my blood.
A full-scale topographic map of Deadwater. Old. Decades old. But updated in real time. I watched as one of the remaining buildings, Adrian's cabin, tucked on the southern ridge, faded from the fabric. Disappeared. Gone. Then a new structure appeared. A tower. Thin, jagged. A needle reaching down, not up. A structure beneath the ground, visible only on the map. Label: Seed Core. That was when the air changed. The compass began to rattle again, violently this time. And from the edge of the pit, a voice. He wasn't finished yet. You were always better at finishing things. I turned. Adrienne Locke stood there, arms crossed, face gaunt, smiling just slightly, like she hadn't aged at all, like she'd never left. But something was wrong. Her eyes. Too wide, too black, too still. Adrienne, I asked. Not anymore, she replied. Then she pointed to the ground. Not at Kip's corpse. At me. Map's incomplete, she said. You know what happens when a cartographer leaves blank space, don't you? She vanished. No footsteps, no dust trail, just gone.
like she'd folded into the air. That night I made camp inside the old gas station, half collapsed, full of silence. I couldn't sleep. Not yet. I opened the last file on the recorder. There is no center Elias, only convergence. The shape the town wants to become. It's you. You were the first seed. You came here once as a child. Buried something.
Forgot it! It didn't forget you. It just needed time to grow. If you see her, don't follow. She's not your sister anymore. She's what you left behind. I shut the recorder, stared into the dark, and in the silence, a shape walked past the window. Small, thin, familiar. Dragging something behind her. A map, drawn in blood. The more of the map I saw, the less of myself I recognized. I wasn't charting a place. I was charting a wound. I left Kip's body in the crater, not out of neglect, out of necessity. Something had shifted in the soil around him. The air above his corpse had the shimmer of heat, though it was bitter cold. It wasn't decay, it was reconstruction. The land was trying to fold him back in like a word misspoken that must be swallowed. I walked, compass in hand, rattling louder now, its hum in sync with my own pulse. The direction it pointed was not cardinal. Not up, not down, not north, not south. It pointed in. By twilight, I reached the structure on the map. There was no tower, not above ground. No marker, no ruin. Just a stretch of rock, surrounded by what looked like burned vegetation, though nothing should have been growing here in the first place. I stepped into the dead zone. The smell hit instantly. Ozone, blood, old leather, and beneath it something faintly floral, familiar. Lilac and coal oil, my sister's scent. I looked down. There, half buried in the cracked earth, was a door handle. Brass, ornate, in the middle of the ground. I hesitated, then pulled. What opened wasn't a trapdoor. It was a seam in the world, a ragged edge, a cut in reality hissing faintly as pressure escaped. Light inside was impossible gray, not from any source, but from absence. Like something was stealing color from the air. I climbed down. The shaft spiraled not by design, but organically, like a tunnel carved by thought instead of tools. The walls throbbed faintly. I touched one. Warm. It pulsed. I pulled my hand back, heart jackhammering. Far below I saw movement. The descent took 20 minutes. At the bottom a chamber, circular, walls covered in soft, repeating spiral glyphs. The air was full of that same ozone and floral scent. In the center, a mirror. No frame, no base, just a mirror. Standing on the stone floor, unsupported vertical as if it grew there. I approached. In the reflection, I didn't see myself. I saw a boy, 10 years old, in dirty overalls, holding a compass and crying. And beside the boy, her, my sister, holding his hand. No, my hand, smiling. Then she turned, looked straight at me, not the reflection, and she spoke. You left me here, Elias. You buried me when you buried your guilt. I became the map because you wouldn't carry it. Now you have to finish what you started. The mirror cracked. From the center, spiraling outward, the floor shook. And then I was no longer in the chamber. I stood in daylight. Same terrain, but everything was new, whole, dead water rebuilt. People walked the streets in dust-covered hats. Mules drank from troughs. Children chased each other barefoot across the church steps. 1930s, Dust Bowl era. But I wasn't just seeing it. I was in it. I turned horrified. Reflected in a storefront window. Me, but not me. My face, but older, worn, dressed in a surveyor's uniform. A man approached. He called me by name. Mr. Thorne. I nodded, numb. He handed me a folded document. Survey lines, seismic data, and a handwritten note. Proceed to install tether site at scene. Use child participants only. Memory stability requires innocence. Signed Locke. A. I dropped the paper. People were watching now, too many, and every face was familiar. I'd seen them before, the headstones, the files, the bodies beneath the sand. They smiled, warmly, welcoming, like they'd been waiting for me to come home. I backed away, panicked.
Turned to run. Hit something solid. The mirror. Right there. In the middle of the street. But this time it was liquid rippling, waiting. I touched it. It pulled me through. I woke back in the chamber. Back in the present. Shaking.
Cold. Compass cracked in my hand. The mirror was gone, but carved where it had stood, "You are the fold." I climbed out of the shaft. The sky was dark, but the moon was red and etched into the hills around Deadwater, burning faintly in phosphorescent spiral patterns. The map, complete and breathing. There's a moment in every map maker's life when they stop drawing lines and start erasing themselves from the paper. I wandered back into Deadwater, not walking, drifting. I no longer trusted the movement of my legs. The bones beneath them felt wrong. Either the ground was shifting or I was. Maybe both. The sky above the town pulsed a dull crimson, not from clouds, but from reflection, as if the land itself had turned its face upward and the sky merely mirrored it back. That's when I saw them. They stood in a loose semicircle outside the chapel's foundation, what was left of them. Echoes, people I'd seen in the files, faces from forgotten census records, men with hollow eyes, women in prairie dresses, too clean for the dirt, a boy with his scalp stitched in a spiral pattern. They weren't ghosts. They weren't human. They were topographies of memory stitched from old pain and dirt and the psychic weight of being left behind. I knew their names, though I'd never met them. The town had made sure of it. It had taught me. With every step, every map, every altered dream. Now it showed me what it had built. A man stepped forward. Thin. Clean-shaven. Sheriff's badge on a rusted chain. He spoke in a voice made of gravel and breath. "You've come to finish it." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. Adrian tried, got close, but she never planted the final marker. Wouldn't bury what needed to be buried. I stared at him. "What is this place?" He smiled. "No teeth, just gums and dust? It's you, Elias, the part of you that never left, the part you disowned. Every memory you didn't want, we planted it, grew it, nurtured it." He reached out and placed something cold in my hand. A child's shoe, size 6, worn through the sole. The laces burned black. I dropped it, stepped back, shaking. Then the woman stepped out, Maven, still soft-spoken, still calm, eyes full of understanding. As if she'd always been here waiting for this exact moment. She said my name like a eulogy. "Elias, you were never sent here to map this place. You were sent here to remember that you built it." I turned, stumbling. The church bell tower was back, fully formed, gleaming, clean. I hadn't noticed it reappear, but the bell was inside out, twisted metal ringing without motion. Beneath the tower, a door had opened. Same one from the mine, same brass handle,
Above it, written in perfect surveyor's script, Seed Vault Access Terminal, Thorn E. They had waited long enough. I went inside. It wasn't a vault. It was a library if the books were organs and the shelves were ribs. The room was shaped like a human chest cavity, pulsing faintly. The walls wept. From hooks hung maps drawn on human skin, my skin, childhood scars, surgical lines, old injuries I'd forgotten, and in the center, a table, wooden, familiar. I recognized the gouge on the edge, a mark I'd carved as a boy, my father's field desk. And sitting at that desk, Adrienne Locke, alive, unaged, writing with a pen made from bone. She looked up. "You're late." I couldn't speak. She rose, slowly came around the table. Her expression was tired, not angry.
"I thought I could carry it alone," she said. "But the land won't accept a surrogate. It needs the origin. It needs you." I whispered, "This isn't real." She stepped closer. "That's what you said when you left her, when you buried the compass, when you let the Bureau fold your memories. You thought forgetting would protect you. But forgetting is how it grows." I sank to my knees. The weight in my chest, unbearable. The truth, crushing. It wasn't that I lost my sister.
It's that I let them use her. They took her innocent, gifted with spatial recursion syndrome, a rare cognitive trait, and tethered the seam to her emotional geometry. Her mind became the blueprint. My guilt became the ink. They made me draw the first lines. As a child, under hypnosis, under sedation, the compass, her toy, the maps. Our dreams layered over dirt, and now it was finished. I was the last piece. Adrienne placed something in front of me. A document. Survey order.
Signature line. I'd signed it as a child. My name in crayon. She whispered, "You want to leave sign again." Finish the fold. I took the pen, hesitated. Then a scream. Not human. Outside the vault. Something wrong. Adrienne's face twisted. She woke up too soon. The walls split. Light poured in. And from the breach my sister stepped through, not as a girl, not as a ghost, but as a map of grief, walking in human form. Her skin was carved with spiral lines.
Her eyes were deep wells of uncharted territory. She opened her mouth, and the sound she made wasn't a scream. It was a memory. Mine, the worst one. The floor fell away, the air roared, and I fell with it. A memory doesn't fade. It folds, creases itself inward like a map worn too many times until the lines vanish, and all that's left is the shape of the pain. I hit ground. Not sand, not stone. Wood. Old planks rotting familiar. I stood knees trembling and looked around. The room was too small for the size of my fear. A child's bedroom. Wallpaper peeling. A broken lamp. Books stacked unevenly on the shelf. A clock with no hands. And on the bed my sister, Abigail, 7 years old. She lay curled thumb tucked against her lip brow, furrowed like she was trying to solve a puzzle in her dreams. I knew this room. I knew this night. It was the night before the Bureau came. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't open. The walls trembled,
and from the shadows I emerged again, myself, younger, 10 years old, clutching a crayon, hair messy, eyes wide with shame. He looked at me. No shock, no fear, just resignation. "You came back?" I swallowed. "What is this?" "The first fold," he said. He turned and pointed to the window. Outside, men in black jackets. Van with government plates, clipboards, radios. A voice came from the hallway. Our mother. crying, pleading, and then another voice. Adrian is sharp and calm. The boy has the condition too, high spatial capacity. He'll guide her through the construct. I didn't know what I was doing, I said aloud. The child me turned. You did. You just didn't understand the cost. He pulled something from his pocket. The compass. Not broken, not bloodstained. Just a toy. A gift. He set it on the desk, then took the crayon and began to draw. On the floor, on the walls, spirals, maps, symbols, one after another precise, each stroke carving a little deeper into the world. The floor buckled. Reality shimmered, and the room split. On one side, the present flickering like a film strip on fire. On the other, the lab, white walls, strapped table, my sister unconscious. Wires in her scalp, Adrian standing over her clipboard in hand. Me older watching. No, I whispered. But I remembered now. I had stood there, not 10 years old, 20. I'd come back. I'd joined the Bureau, told them I wanted to finish what she started. But I hadn't come to save her. I'd come to understand the map. The vault trembled, the two timelines collided, and she walked in again. Abigail, older, now skin-stitched with survey lines, hands outstretched. She spoke in a voice not hers, not mine, the folded voice. There is no guilt, only geometry, no death, only unfinished topography. You brought me here. You mapped me to contain the breach. Now I am the breach. She placed her hands on my chest, and I felt it. Everything. Her dreams, the procedure. The moment she woke inside the seam alone, her mind pressed into the dirt, replaying my betrayal like a broken reel. She had never died. She had become the first landmark. I fell to my knees. I couldn't speak, couldn't think, only remember. I looked at her, at the scar on her cheek, at the shape she'd become, and I did the only thing I could. I took the compass and drew the last line. A spiral, closed. A map complete. The world fractured. For a heartbeat, I was everywhere. In the vault, in the chapel, in the field where they buried her, in the bureau van holding her hand, in the mirror, watching myself rot, in the soil pressed flat beneath coordinates carved in grief. And then silence. I opened my eyes. I was alone. Deadwater was gone. Nothing remained. No buildings, no chapel, no sand. Just flat black stone, featureless, unmapped, and in the sky hanging above me a single red spiral. Still turning. We draw maps to understand the world. But what happens when the world begins to map us? I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe hours. Maybe decades, folded in on themselves like origami soaked in grief. The town was gone. The people, the chapel. Even the air felt thinner, like I was standing on a different plane somewhere beneath time or just adjacent to it. Only one thing remained. The spiral in the sky, pulsing softly like a slow breath or a heartbeat from something enormous and unseen. I took a step forward. The black stone beneath me rippled faintly, flexing like skin. I wasn't walking on earth anymore. I was walking on consciousness, memory, regret. And far ahead something rose from the horizon. A structure. Not a building. Not a mountain. A shape. Geometrically impossible. Shifting. Alive. Like a knot that couldn't be untied without unraveling the idea of shape itself. It called to me. Not with sound, but with familiarity. I approached. Each step pulled a memory from me, not metaphorically. I felt them leave tiny pieces of my past tugged loose and consumed by the terrain. The taste of honey on a wooden spoon. The sound of Abigail singing through a cracked bedroom door. The moment I told the Bureau I was just a surveyor. Gone. Fed to the land.
It wasn't punishment. It was toll. By the time I reached the base of the structure, I barely knew my name. Only my function remained. I was the cartographer, the original, the first witness. And waiting for me at the base of the shape, Adrienne. But not the woman I knew. This version of her towered 10-feet-high eyes, black as satellite void's hair, coiled like cartographic lines circling the globe. A goddess made of guilt and unfinished research. She opened her mouth and my voice came out. You completed the map. I shook my head. I didn't mean to. You always meant to. The guilt was the ink. The sister was the key. And now we draw in reverse. The structure groaned. The spiral in the sky turned faster. I looked up and realized it wasn't a symbol. It was a hole. A lens. And something behind it had begun to see me back. Adrienne stepped aside, revealing a door, just like the others I'd seen. But this one was made of bone, its hinges whispering like breath between dimensions. Behind this door, she said, is where you buried her. Not her body, her meaning. And when you open it, you don't just change dead water. You redefine cartography. No more maps, no more memory, just raw, recursive space. I hesitated. And then I heard her. Abigail. A child's voice, small and cracked. Elias, please. I opened the door. There was no room, no chamber, no vault, just an eye. Large, infinite, staring, and beneath it a version of me, young, crying. Holding her hand, but she wasn't moving, not this time. I looked up. You drew me to forget. Now you remember. And the spiral, the sky, the ground collapsed inward. I screamed as the memories flooded back. All of them. I saw every lie, every room, every failed interview where I pretended I didn't know what happened. I saw Adrienne grooming me from the start. I saw the Bureau not building the project, but inheriting it. From me, I'd started it. I'd made the first fold. Not in maps, not in paper, in people. The eye blinked, and everything went white, then black, then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in a chair. Back in the Bureau. Clean desk, white walls. A man in a suit stood across from me, clipboard in hand. Welcome back, Dr. Thorne. How do you feel? I tried to speak, but the words were not mine. I looked down. My hands were small, young, clean, unscarred. He leaned in, whispering, you did it. Dead water is complete. Now we begin mapping the next mind. Behind him a glass wall, on the other side a girl, wearing my sister's face, smiling, holding a compass. You can map a place so many times it forgets what it was. But if you draw the wrong shape, the map forgets you. The Bureau's room was too quiet. Everything sterile, symmetrical, padded with a comfort meant to disarm. The man with the clipboard waited for my answer, but I wasn't listening. I was watching the girl beyond the glass. She had Abigail's eyes, her quiet stillness, her strange calm, but not her soul. This was something constructed. The seam's new cartographic anchor. The next seed. And I was its architect. Except something was wrong. A flicker in the girl's reflection. A blink that didn't match the real. A temporal drift. And in that instant, I remembered something I wasn't supposed to.
A fold I never drew. A corridor that led away. Dr. Thorne, the man asked again. Are you lucid? I smiled. Not because I was, but because I'd found the flaw. I lunged, not at him, at the glass. It cracked, not physically, but conceptually. The walls around me blurred, warping like overheated film. I slammed the compass I'd kept hidden in my jacket into the wall. The needle shattered, and the world screamed. Suddenly I was back in Deadwater. Only now the town was burning in reverse. Ash pulled upward. Buildings rose backward. Fire sucked into candles. Time was bleeding upward through the seams. I stood in the center, barefoot, compass fragments in my palms. The map had looped, but I had broken its compass. The flaw wasn't in the town, it was in me. The terrain trembled. The spiral in the sky spasmed, lost cohesion, and from the mind-mouth now, a jagged wound in the earth, Adrienne emerged, monstrous and malformed, half data, half flesh. Her voice echoed in 7 directions at once. You've severed the anchor. The recursion cannot complete. Do you realize what you've done? I nodded. Yes. I made the town remember too much. The seam began to fray. Buildings collapsed into blueprints. Streets folded into text. The residents, those echoes, froze mid-motion, then peeled away like pages. One by one, including the version of me. And then I saw her, the real Abigail. Not aged, not possessed, just still, asleep beneath the earth, buried where they had kept her a battery for the memory machine we'd constructed. I knelt Doug with my bare hands. Her eyes opened as I uncovered her, and she smiled weakly. You finished the map wrong, she whispered. That's the only way we escape. I pulled her free. Carried her up from the pit, compassless, directionless, holding nothing but raw memory. And above us, the spiral began to shatter, not explode, but unravel like a reel of film thrown into the wind. Deadwater screamed, Adrienne screamed, and then the sky tore open, not a rift, not a door, but a return. I stepped through with Abigail in my arms, back into a hospital, present day, alarms blaring, a nurse yelling, "We've got return." She was on a gurney. I was on the floor. Alive. Abigail beside me. Breathing, no scars, no spirals. A man in a suit stood over us. Older, calm. He looked familiar. Me, an older version, smiling. Don't worry, he said. We closed the seam. I stared at him. What is this? He handed me a clipboard. New map, blank. Your next assignment. After all, we still need cartographers. I looked down. In my palm, the compass, whole again, spinning, smiling. Every map lies, not by omission, but by structure. The moment you draw a line, you decide what isn't. The horror is never in what the map shows. It's in what the map refuses to remember. They ran tests. Weeks passed. Machines hummed. Doctors spoke in circles. Analysts came and went. Abigail and I were miraculous, they said. No sign of trauma, no physical anomalies. Cognitive scans clean. The Bureau made its apologies, issued sealed statements, a quiet settlement. The project buried under a new name. The seam classified as unstable terrain. Abigail said almost nothing. She just watched me, like she knew I hadn't escaped. Not really, not yet. I kept the compass locked in a drawer. I didn't touch it, not for months. But I couldn't bring myself to destroy it either. Because deep down I understood it wasn't a tool. It was an invitation. And it wasn't finished. The Bureau reassigned me. Nothing overtly sinister, simple consulting work. Cartographic reclamation. Some damaged files from an old research facility in northern Canada, harmless on paper. But when I opened the satellite image, my blood went cold. A tiny snow-choked town, barely visible, no roads in or out, a single label in the corner project site saltwater fold, and underneath, initial surveyor Thorn. E. I never remembered going there, but I recognized the contours, the bend of the ridgeline, the shape of the lake, the spiral carved into the frozen forest.
I stared at the image for a long time. Then I pulled open the drawer. The compass waited for me, silent, polished, still spinning. That night I dreamt of Abigail, but she was older now, like me. Her skin tattooed with new lines, not spirals grids, the kind used in urban planning. "It's growing," she said. "What is the place beneath places? The route map. The thing that remembers us before we remember ourselves. Can we stop it?" She shook her head.
It's not meant to be stopped. It's meant to be understood. I woke up with my hands trembling, the satellite photo open on the screen, the compass beside it, and a new note typed time-stamped at 3:03 a.m. I hadn't written it, but it was in my style. It read, "The map must be continued. There is always another fold. There is always another cartographer." I looked into the mirror, and for the briefest moment, just a flicker, the reflection was not me. It was the child version of me, smiling, holding a crayon, drawing spirals in the steam of the glass. And behind him, the shape, the one from Deadwater, the one that lived underneath, still pulsing, still breathing, still waiting. I picked up the compass, held it to my chest, and listened, not for direction, but for the sound that comes before a place exists. A soft click, a quiet tremor. And then it pointed west,